Rain tapped softly against the window as Lena stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. The small apartment around her was dimly lit, only the warm glow of a single lamp filled the space. Her son, Danny, was asleep in the next room, clutching the threadbare teddy bear that had survived every move they'd made in the past 5 years. Lena adjusted her dress, an old navy blue one she had worn only twice before. It wasn't new, but it was clean, pressed carefully that afternoon between shifts. She turned sideways, checking herself one last time. Her stomach twisted with nerves. It had been years since she'd gone on a date, let alone a blind one. But her friend, Mia, wouldn't stop insisting. "You deserve a night out," Mia had said. "Not everyone is like your ex, Lena. Maybe you'll meet someone kind." Kind. That word echoed in her mind like a prayer. She checked her small wallet. 2 $20 bills and one $10. $50 total. That was it. Half of it should have gone to groceries, but tonight she told herself she'd risk it. Maybe she'd find a reason to smile again. Maybe she could allow herself one evening to feel like a woman, not just a mother fighting to survive. As she pulled on her worn-out coat and slipped into her shoes, she glanced at Danny's sleeping face. She whispered softly, "Mommy's gonna be back soon, baby." He stirred slightly but didn't wake. That tiny apartment was her entire world, and stepping out of it tonight felt like walking a tightrope over an endless drop. The restaurant looked more elegant than she expected. Crystal lights glimmered from the ceiling, polished tables reflected the golden glow, and waiters in black uniforms moved with effortless grace. Lena hesitated at the entrance, suddenly feeling out of place. She tugged gently at her sleeves, praying no one noticed the fraying edges of her coat. "Reservation?" the hostess asked with a smile. Yes, Lena Brooks. "Table for 2. The hostess checked the list and nodded. "Right this way, Ms. Brooks." Lena followed her through the room, heart pounding. She could feel eyes glancing her way. People in expensive clothes, men in suits, women with diamond earrings that probably cost more than her yearly rent. But she kept her head up, refusing to shrink. Across the room, sitting at a quiet corner table, Ethan Cole watched the scene unfold. He had been sipping wine, barely engaged in the business dinner that had just ended. But when his gaze drifted toward the entrance, he saw her. Something about her, the nervous smile, the soft determination in her eyes, caught his attention. She wasn't like the people he usually saw in places like this. There was no pretense, no performance. Just honesty. Lena reached her table and found Ryan, her blind date, already there. He was scrolling through his phone, not even looking up as she sat down. "Hey," he muttered. "Hi," she said, trying to sound cheerful. "Sorry if I'm late." He glanced up briefly, giving her a once-over. "You're fine. I just don't like waiting." The words stung more than she wanted to admit. But she smiled anyway. She'd learned how to hide her feelings well. As the waiter came by, Ryan ordered a glass of wine, an expensive one, and didn't even ask if she wanted anything. She quietly ordered water. At the next table, Ethan closed his laptop and leaned back, watching quietly. He wasn't trying to intrude, but the energy between the two intrigued him. He saw the subtle way she folded her hands in her lap, the tight smile she gave, the way she seemed to shrink just slightly when Ryan spoke over her. Ethan had seen people chase money, power, and influence all his life. But grace under humiliation, that was rare. Lena's fingers brushed over the rim of her glass. $50. That's all she had, and as she sat across from a man who couldn't even look her in the eyes, she wondered if tonight would be another reminder of how cruel the world could be. Across the room, Ethan's quiet gaze never wavered. He didn't know her story yet, but something deep inside him already whispered, it was one worth knowing. Ryan kept talking, mostly about himself. His latest gym routine, his car, how his friends always told him he could have been a model if he'd tried. Lena nodded politely, sipping her water. She wasn't listening anymore. Her mind kept wandering to Danny, to whether she had locked the door properly before leaving, to how many shifts she'd need to pick up next week to cover groceries. "So, you work at a diner, right?" Ryan said suddenly, interrupting her thoughts. "Yes," she said quietly. "It's small, but He chuckled, cutting her off. "That's cute. I guess it's good to stay busy." Lena forced a smile. "Yeah, It helps. Ryan leaned back in his chair, glancing around the room like he owned it. You know, I usually don't go for women with kids, he said casually, swirling his wine. But my buddy said you were sweet, so I thought, why not give it a try? Her stomach turned. She wasn't sure whether to laugh or walk out right then. But she stayed. Partly out of politeness, partly because leaving would mean wasting her $50. At the next table, Ethan set down his glass, watching the uncomfortable exchange. He couldn't hear every word, but the man's smug tone was enough to understand what was happening. He saw Lena glance toward the menu, hesitate, then quietly close it without ordering. She wasn't going to eat, he could tell. When Ryan excused himself to take a call, Lena exhaled softly, finally able to breathe. She looked around the room, admiring the chandeliers and the soft music. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it might feel like to belong somewhere like this. To not worry about every dollar, to just sit and enjoy a meal without guilt. The waiter approached gently. Ma'am, would you like to order something while you wait? She smiled shyly and shook her head. No, thank you, I'm fine. But she wasn't fine. She was tired. Her heart hurt. Her hands itched to grab her purse and leave. Ethan hesitated, then called the waiter over. Excuse me, he said quietly. The lady at that table. Put her bill on mine, please. And don't mention it to her. The waiter nodded discreetly. Ethan leaned back, feeling a strange mixture of protectiveness and admiration. He didn't want to embarrass her. He just wanted her to have one evening where she didn't have to count every coin. When Ryan returned, he laughed loudly into his phone before slipping it into his pocket. Sorry about that. Business call. You know how it is. I understand, Lena said softly. Good. So, what do you do when you're not working? He asked. I spend time with my son, she said, her tone brightening just a little. He's 7. He loves building things, Legos, blocks, anything he can get his hands on. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Oh, you've got a kid that young. Must be hard finding a babysitter for this. The way he said this made her chest tighten. She tried to laugh it off. It can be, sometimes. When the waiter returned with the check, Ryan glanced at it, then sighed dramatically. Oh no, you're not going to believe this. I forgot my wallet in the car. Lena froze. It's okay, she said automatically. I can. The waiter shook his head gently. The bill has already been taken care of. Ryan blinked. What? By who? I'm not sure, sir. It's settled. Ryan frowned, then shrugged. Well, I guess we got lucky. He stood, tossing his napkin on the table. Maybe I'll text you sometime. Lena didn't answer. She just sat there, stunned. Lucky wasn't the word she'd use. As Ryan strutted out, she looked around, scanning the restaurant. Her eyes landed on Ethan, who was pretending to look at the wine list. For a second, their eyes met. He smiled faintly, warm, genuine, unassuming. Lena's lips parted slightly, but before she could speak, Ethan turned back to his table, giving her space. She rose slowly, clutching her purse, her mind spinning. The embarrassment faded, replaced by a quiet curiosity. Who had done that for her? And why? As she stepped outside into the cool night air, she looked up at the city lights and whispered to herself, maybe kindness still exists. Behind her, Ethan watched through the window, a thoughtful look in his eyes. He didn't know her name yet, but something told him this wasn't the last time their paths would cross. Lena walked briskly down the quiet street, her heels clicking against the pavement. The night air was cool, brushing against her skin as she wrapped her coat tighter. She didn't know whether to feel humiliated or grateful. The blind date had been a disaster, but someone's unseen kindness had saved her from losing her last bit of money. She glanced over her shoulder once more at the restaurant glowing behind her, wondering who that stranger was. Excuse me, a voice called from behind. She turned, startled. Ethan was walking toward her, his steps calm and deliberate. Up close, he looked even more polished. Dark coat, confident posture, but his eyes were kind, not the cold, assessing kind she often saw from people with money. Hi, he said with a polite smile. Sorry if I startled you. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. Lena hesitated. I'm fine, thank you. He nodded slowly. That guy you were with. He didn't seem like much of a gentleman. Her lips curved in a faint, embarrassed smile. You heard all that, didn't you? Enough, Ethan said softly. You handled yourself better than most would. I was impressed. Lena tilted her head, unsure how to respond. That's kind of you to say. But I think I'd rather forget tonight ever happened. Ethan smiled, his tone light. Then how about starting over? No blind dates, no awkward small talk. Just two strangers grabbing a cup of coffee. She stared at him for a moment, trying to read his intentions. You're not hitting on me, are you? He laughed quietly, shaking his head. No, I just think you could use a better ending to your evening. Something in his voice made her relax. Against her usual caution, she agreed. All right, one coffee. They walked to a small cafe a few blocks away, one of those late-night spots that smelled like cinnamon and roasted beans. The place was nearly empty, except for a barista cleaning tables. They took a corner booth, and for the first time that night, Lena felt like she could breathe. Do you come to that restaurant often? She asked, sipping her latte. Not really, he said. Business dinner, mostly. I'm not much for fancy places. You looked comfortable enough, she teased lightly. He chuckled. Old habit. Pretending to belong. Lena smiled, studying him. There was something different about this man, an ease, a warmth. He didn't boast or try to impress. He asked questions. He listened. So, what do you do? She asked. I run a company, he said vaguely, not wanting to intimidate her. Mostly tech stuff. Boring, really. She laughed softly. Sounds important. He shrugged. It pays the bills. Then, more gently, he asked, and you? You mentioned you work at a diner. She nodded, eyes lowering. Yeah, it's not much, but it keeps us afloat. I'm saving to start my own baking business one day. Cakes, cookies, all that. His expression lit up. That sounds incredible. What's stopping you? Lena hesitated, fingers tracing her coffee cup. Money, time, confidence, maybe. I've had to put a lot of dreams on hold. Ethan leaned forward slightly. You shouldn't give up on it. The way you talked about it just now, you already sound like someone who's going to make it happen. Her eyes met his, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. You don't even know me. He smiled. I don't have to. Sometimes, you can just tell. For the first time in a long while, Lena laughed, a real, unguarded laugh. The tension melted away, replaced by something new. A quiet connection. Time slipped by unnoticed. They talked about books, music, childhood memories, and life's unfair turns. Outside, the city was silent except for the occasional passing car. When the cafe lights dimmed, signaling closing time, Lena glanced at her watch and gasped. Oh no, it's past midnight. My babysitter must think I got kidnapped. Ethan stood, smiling. Then I'd better walk you home before she calls the police. Outside, they walked side by side under the streetlights. There was no awkwardness now, just the calm of two people who'd found unexpected company in the chaos of their lives. As they reached her building, Lena turned to him. Thank you, for tonight, for everything. He nodded gently. You don't have to thank me. Still, she said softly, I will. Ethan smiled, hands in his pockets. Then I guess I'll see you around, Lena. She blinked in surprise. How do you know my name? He grinned. You told the hostess when you came in. Before she could reply, he gave a small wave and walked away into the night. She watched him disappear, her heart unexpectedly light. She didn't know who he really was, but for the first time in years, hope didn't feel impossible anymore. A week had passed since that night. Lena couldn't stop thinking about him, the stranger with warm eyes and a voice that carried more kindness than she'd known in years. Every time she washed dishes at the diner or tucked Danny into bed, his words echoed in her mind. You shouldn't give up on it. She'd told herself it was just one night, a fleeting moment between two strangers. Still, she found herself smiling every time she thought about their conversation. For the first time in a long while, she'd felt seen, not as a struggling single mom or a waitress scraping by, but as a woman with dreams worth chasing. Then one morning, while cleaning the diner counter, her manager called out, Lena, you've got mail. She frowned. No one ever sent her mail. She wiped her hands and took the envelope. It was elegant, thick ivory paper with her name written in neat handwriting. Inside was a short letter. Greater than Dear Ms. Brooks, you've been nominated for our local business startup grant program. We invite you to present your small business idea at our mentorship event this Friday. The Horizon Foundation. She blinked, confused. She hadn't applied for anything. But her heart began to race. Could it be a mistake? Or maybe, fate giving her a nudge? Friday came faster than she expected. She borrowed a simple blouse from her neighbor, tied her hair neatly, and carried a small folder with notes and sketches of her dream bakery, Sweet Beginnings. Her hands trembled as she entered the sleek event hall, filled with people in suits and elegant dresses. She almost turned around and left. But then she saw a familiar face at the front of the room. Ethan. He stood near the stage, speaking to a small group. The same calm confidence, the same easy smile. Only now, everyone seemed to listen when he spoke. The banner behind him read, Horizon Foundation, Empowering Entrepreneurs. Lena froze. Her breath caught in her chest. He's the founder. Ethan glanced up and saw her standing near the door. For a second, surprise flickered in his eyes, followed by warmth. He excused himself and walked toward her, his steps purposeful but gentle. You came, he said softly. You're the reason I'm here, aren't you? He smiled. I might have suggested your name. You told me about your dream, and I thought it deserved a chance. Her voice shook. You didn't have to do that. I know, he said. But I wanted to. You have something rare, Lena. You don't give up, even when the world tells you to. People like you just need someone to open a door. She looked at him. This man she barely knew, who had seen her on her worst night and still believed in her best. Emotion rose in her throat. I don't even know what to say. Say you'll walk in there and tell them your dream, he said with a quiet grin. That's all. Her palms were sweaty, but she did it. She stood in front of the small panel and spoke about Sweet Beginnings, a bakery where everything was homemade, where warmth and simplicity mattered more than polish and profit. She talked about her son, her struggles, and how baking had been her therapy through every storm. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Then someone began to clap. Then another, until the entire panel was applauding. Afterward, Ethan met her outside, holding 2 cups of coffee. So, he said, handing one to her, how'd it feel? She smiled, her eyes glistening. Like breathing for the first time. He nodded. Then I'd call that a success. A few weeks later, Lena stood behind the counter of a small but charming bakery. The sign above the door read Sweet Beginnings. The air smelled of sugar and cinnamon. Danny sat on a stool, licking icing off his fingers as customers lined up at the counter. Ethan stepped inside, dressed casually this time, holding a bouquet of daisies. For the boss, he said. Lena laughed, wiping flour from her cheek. You keep showing up like this, people will think you own the place. He leaned on the counter, smiling. Maybe I just like the cookies. Their eyes met. The warmth that had started that night in the cafe had only deepened, something unspoken but real. As the doorbell jingled and laughter filled the little bakery, Lena realized her life had changed. Not because a millionaire had noticed her, but because someone had believed she was worth believing in. And this time, she finally believed it too.